Hello YouTube, and welcome to my channel. Recently I've gotten a few questions like, am I still a liberalist, or how can I be a reactionary and a liberalist at the same time? So I thought I'd do a quick video to address some of those questions. First of all, I am no longer affiliated with the Liberalist International Association or any of its affiliate organizations. They're still set up and running, but my own personal commitments prevent me from being involved on the same level I once was. They're still great guys, and I wish them continued success and hope that we'll actually get the chance to meet at some point. However, I still consider myself a liberalist in the sense that I believe that the natural law arguments for organizing the political order along a system of natural rights and representative government basically still stand. I've made the arguments elsewhere, so I won't go too in-depth here, but just as a refresher, the end of government is the common good of the governed. This is the traditional formulation of the purpose of government of the classical world, essentially, protecting and preserving those things which are useful to all of society. 2. What is good of various things differs according to each thing's nature. This is obvious. What is good for a dog is not good for a human, and vice versa. Therefore, government must consider the good not as an abstract principle, but with regard to the actual human beings that it governs. And human beings are creatures of reason and will. Unlike an animal, we are not merely content to be told how to work and how to eat and how to live. There is a reason why this cry became a meme. Human beings want to be responsible for themselves, to be free to choose how to contribute to the common good, and to participate in determining what the common good is for their particular society. At the same time, we are also social beings who desire to participate in a community. It's not just that we live in a society, but really society lives in us. In short, we desire that our government respects our individuality while at the same time allowing us to be represented in the administration of public goods. Therefore, a good government is one that fulfills the needs of our two-sided nature, both individual and communal. It respects both the rights of the person and it is representative of the people. So, if this is what good government is, then how has that worked since the rise of liberalism?
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never sound retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on.
Clearly not very well. As non-liberals point out, since Western society has become more liberal, there seems to be a worsening of societal conditions. Now, this is obviously a very generalized statement that doesn't take into account the many great social advances that were made in the last 300 years, and it may be unfair to lay the blame for all the calamities of the 20th century at the feet of quote-unquote liberalism. So there is a nuanced argument to be made here. However, sidestepping that argument, I think it's fair to say, as Patrick Deneen does in Why Liberalism Failed, that liberalism has not delivered on its promises. He writes, "Liberalism trumpets equal rights while fostering incomparable material inequality. Its legitimacy rests on consent, yet it discourages civic commitments in favor of privatism, and in its pursuit of individual autonomy, it has given rise to the most far-reaching comprehensive state system in history." So the question is, if the logical argument for individual rights and representative government is solid, why has liberalism not worked? And this is where I and most of the liberalists part ways. Most I've spoken to will argue that the problems of liberalism are mostly external, that the progressive Marxist threat is essentially born outside of liberalism and has come to attack it. There may be some merit to aspects of this narrative, but I don't think it can provide a full explanation. After all, if progressive ideology is wholly foreign to liberalism, then why was it not treated like an invader and repelled? Instead, liberals treated progressives like the Aztecs treated the conquistadors and gave them control of all our cultural institutions. Now, it might be possible this happened after all. It did happen with the Aztecs and the conquistadors, but it seems more likely to me that progressivism is not foreign to liberalism. Now, reactionaries might leap and say, well then progressivism must be the inevitable outcome of liberalism. Progressivism is inherent to liberalism's nature. But I don't think that's true either. Rather, I think liberalism is like a child born of two parents, the Reformation and the Enlightenment. The aspects of liberalism that became progressivism only did so because of the influence of these two parents. The Reformation taught liberalism to hate authority, and the Enlightenment taught liberalism to hate religion. Under this parentage, liberalism was destined to become progressivism. Note, however, that this says nothing of liberalism itself. Where my fellow reactionaries and I part is that I believe that liberalism is inherently true. But this truth needs to somehow be separated from its historical origin, which has distorted that truth beyond recognition. If somehow a state that rejected the overreaches of the Enlightenment and the Reformation could somehow become the foster parent for liberalism, if, for example, the United States had been founded as a Catholic colony rather than a Puritan one, I think that would be the best of all possible worlds. Now, this has been a lot of abstract talk to make a relatively simple point. Essentially, I agree with liberalists that natural rights and representative government are necessary for a good state, and I agree with the reactionaries that it's not sufficient for it. But what are the practical results of this difference in perspective? Here are some examples. First, while I do hold that representative government does require some kind of input from the people or consent of the governed, I do not hold to the principle that one person, one vote is necessarily the best way of doing that, and realistically, even in countries where one person, one vote is the law, there are limits on the application of that principle. The Electoral College in the United States is the best example. Ultimately, even an unelected government could be representative and have consent of the governed if their authority is grounded in the traditions of the people. Now, in many circumstances, one person, one vote is a pretty good way of deciding things, but it should hardly be considered the only way. Second, some liberalists argue for a strict separation between church and state. While I agree that some kind of freedom of religion is necessary, I don't think that necessarily entails or is even best guaranteed by that separation. An established church with a limited legislative role may be, nota bene, maybe, in the legitimate interest of the state. Third, because I ground the origin of natural rights in human nature, the state has a legitimate interest in prohibiting or otherwise limiting the spread of acts contrary to human nature, even if those acts in of themselves do not violate anyone's rights. Examples include drug use, gambling, prostitution, and profiting off of pornography. It does not include, as some reactionaries might argue, sodomy laws, though it would certainly include prohibiting public advocacy of it. Fourth, a principle of subsidiarity should reign. On the national level, laws should be very broad and err on the side of protecting individual rights. On the local level, it can be presumed that people will likely be more homogeneous in character and opinions. So prohibitions, taxes, or policies that would be invasive on the national level would, on the local level, be seen as common sense. This should help clear up where I stand for people who might have questions about it. What do you think? Leave me your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, I'm Benedict the 17th. Go with God.